Hi, my name is Bill Yonker. On the count of three, I'm going to say, hi, Bill. 1, 2, 3. You see, we're starting a relationship. Here's a major axiom for my life. The best thing in life are good relationships. The worst thing in life are bad relationships. And everything else is just details in between. It's all about relationships. You see on the screen some of my best friends. My wife, she's in the red. Tim and Brenda Tiemann, both graduates from here. And Chip May, he didn't graduate from here. He's now camp director at Camp Arcadia, but he worked here. He's the one photobombing. It's about relationships. Sadly, people who have not yet figured it out or don't believe that have proved to have an amazing capacity to sabotage their own lives and to hurt the lives of others. Some years ago, I was speaking down in Florida at a junior high gathering. 500 junior high kids, and then a sprinkling of some high school kids. And we were at a big hotel in Cocoa Beach, Florida, right on the Atlantic Ocean. It was awesome. And I can tell when I'm speaking if I've got people, I can tell if I got them there, or sometimes if I don't have them, they're like looking around. But I had these kids. And I was talking about the unconditional, tireless love of God the Father for us all the time. And as I was talking, there was a kid over to my left, and he was one of those cool kids. You know, there's just some people that have an aura of cool. He had his hat on backwards, and he was just kind of, chilling. He was dialed in. I could see he was paying attention. The other reason I could tell he was cool is all the girls around him were going, they were like just into him. And it wasn't part of my message, and I don't know why I said this, but I looked at him and I said, "Hey, dude, what's your name?" And he said, "Me?" I said, "Yeah, you do. What's your name?" The hat on backwards, the cool one. He said, "My name's Brent." I said, "Brent, I want to tell you something. I bet there are people in your life who've neglected, rejected, and disrespected you, who've made you feel alienated, isolated, and separated, who've not then made you feel repressed, depressed, and even oppressed. But I want to tell you this. God the Father will never abandon you, will never forsake you, will never forfeit you, will never forget you. He will not let you go." And the unthinkable happened. He burst into tears. And so I did the only thing I could do. I started talking to everybody on this side of the room. I don't even remember how I finished the talk. All I remember is finishing, saying amen. The kids stood up, gave me a standing ovation. I jumped off the stage. I'm high-fiving because I was making my way over to that kid. But as soon as I was done, he was up and out the door. I looked for him afterwards in the lobby, in the men's room. He was nowhere to be found. I came back in the ballroom. That's where we were having this event. And I sat and I just waited till the end of this particular celebration. And some girls from Naples, Florida came up, and I was meeting them and talking to them. And as I was talking to them, I kind of looked over to my side, and there was Brent. He was a few yards away from me and was just kind of kicking. He had sunglasses on, I'm sure, to hide his puffy eyes. He was just kind of looking over the sunglasses, kept looking at me, and I thought, oh, good, he wants to talk. So I said to the girls, I got to go talk to this guy. I'll catch you some more. I want to get to know you better, but let me get this guy. And they go, yeah, you go. So I walked up, I held up my hand, I said, Brent. He shook my hand, he said, I'm so sorry. I cried. I said, dude, it's not your fault, it was me. I didn't mean to call you out. I said, I can't believe I did that. I said, are you okay? He said, do you got a minute to talk to me? My exact words were this: Brent, I have nothing better in my whole life to do at this very moment than talk to you. We went outside and sat on the beach. There was a bench overlooking the Atlantic Ocean, absolutely gorgeous. The sun was setting behind us. And he told me that his problem was with his dad. He and his dad had been fighting a lot lately. And it would get pretty ugly. And his mom would try to help, but she would just end up crying. Well, the day the youth gathering started, Brent got his report card. And he knew he was going to get his report card that day. And he never went to these youth things before, but he figured if he went to the youth thing before his dad got home, maybe his dad would forget that he had his report card because he knew it wasn't going to be a very good report card. Well, Brent came home from school with his report card, and his dad was already home. His dad said, I know you're leaving soon. Let me see your report card. Brent handed it over. His dad looked at it, threw it down, and started yelling. And Brent started yelling, and Mom started crying. And they kept yelling and yelling, Brent said, till they could hear a beep in the driveway. The youth leader was so excited Brent was finally going to go to one of these. She said she'd even come pick him up. He said, I got to go. I'm going to this youth thing you said I could go to. And he bent down to pick up his duffel bag. And as he stood up, he said he heard his dad say, Brent. And he was just looking for some kind of encouragement. So he turned around and he said, what? And his dad looked at him and he said, Brent, I wish you were never born. I'm a daddy. I know it's frustrating sometimes, but a daddy's not supposed to say that to his son because his son will never forget that. And it didn't surprise me that he was crying in the ballroom because his life was swirling down the toilet because that's where his relationship with his father was. Best thing in life are good relationships. The worst thing in life are bad relationships. I don't know if you've been to many deathbeds. I'm a pastor, so I've been to a lot. Deathbed is a bed with somebody in it who's dying. And it's there, people as they look back on their life, and they talk about their vision is 20/20 at that point. They got clear vision. And you know what most people say on their deathbeds, my experience. Here's what they say. Wish I would have, suppose I should have, think I could have. It's about regrets. And you know what most of the regrets are about? Wish I would have loved the people in my life better than I did. Wish I could have taken care of the ones God gave me to take care of better. Wish I would have gotten to know God better because I'm going to see him pretty soon. Other regrets, at least my experience. And it may not be other people's experience, but it's my experience. Most of the regrets are about people having to deal with unfulfilled relationships. Now, folks, nobody's going to deny that life is hard. I mean, there's so many people, I got to go back one, that feel chased. And then there's people who feel squashed. There's a cat under that dog. Then there's people who feel trapped. Get it? Prison to... And then there's some people who are simply out of control. Here, the cat gets it again. So many people feel chased, squashed, trapped, out of control. So they end up trying to break into some meaningfulness only to knock themselves and sometimes their friends out. This is a real surveillance video. Two guys are going to break into a building. One's the lookout. Here's the friend. So many people trying to break into some kind of meaningfulness, and all they do is knock themselves out. And there are people who then, in order to not have regrets, in order to break into meaningfulness, will work very hard at different aspects of their lives. They'll work on their careers. They'll work on their homes. They'll work on their cars. They'll work on their yards. They'll work on their studies. They'll work on their talents. They'll work on their crafts and hobbies and pastimes. But then they just expect their relationships to happen. I'm not suggesting we don't work on those things. We should. But I'm more than suggesting we need to work on our relationships. For so many people, we end up focusing on those things that aren't essential, and our lives are burning down around us. Somebody say amen. It's true. The great model of maintaining and working in good relationships for me is Jesus. He gets denied, and he forgives the denier. He gets betrayed, and in the midst of the betrayal, he calls the betrayer friend, even in the midst of the betrayal. To a bleeding woman, he calls daughter. To the God in heaven, he calls Father. To those of us who follow Jesus and believe in the power of his death and resurrection, he calls friends and family members. The first church I served was in the inner city of Detroit. My wife, Joanne, and I were the only Anglos in an all-African American church. We got there July after I graduated from seminary. And by December, I was beat down. The crime, the poverty, the fear, the sadness in my neighborhood. We had a drive-by shooting take place when I was outside shaking hands with people after the service. And I saw the pop, and I saw a kid who was half a block down, red erupt out of his thigh when he got shot. And all of a sudden, one of my elders, Americus Crawford, he tackled me, tore a hole in my suit pants. Said, when the shooting starts, Pastor, you get down. So it was getting into December, and my birthday is December 18th. It's a week before Christmas. And because I used to complain that nobody paid attention to my birthday, they'd give me one present. They'd say, Happy Merry Birthday, Christmas. I would make a big deal of it all through high school. I sent out flyers in October. Bill's birthday is coming. Shop often, shop early. One time, my favorite flyer. Don't embarrass both of us by getting me a card. Buy me a present. My mom would make a big deal out of my birthday. She would make German chocolate cake's my favorite. She would make a 4-layer German chocolate cake because red was my favorite color. She'd make red frosting with little coconut sprinkles. I knew that wasn't going to happen. So it was after church, and this elegant, wonderful, elderly black woman came up to me. And my parishioners didn't call me Pastor Yonker, they called me my pastor. It wasn't long after I got there, they took possession of me, and I loved it. They called me my pastor. And she came up and she put her arm on my arm and she said, My pastor, what's the matter? You look sad. And I put on my happy Jesus face. Oh no, Mrs. Jones, I'm doing good. And she looked at me, she said, Don't you lie to me. How dare you lie? We're in the house of the Lord. You're talking to a holy woman of God. Don't you lie to me. I said, Mrs. Jones, you feel so different. She said, You should. You white. I said, Well, that's part of it, but I'm a young white guy. And over 90% of the parishioners were older African-American females. I grew up in a middle-class area, and we were in the heart of the ghetto. I said, even the food is different here. Wednesdays, we had a school attached to the church, and the government gave us, I don't know how we got it, but the government gave us money, and the cook would make collard greens and bacon on Wednesdays. Now, I love bacon, but I couldn't even stand the smell. I'd go make visits on Wednesdays just because the church was attached to the school, and the smell pervaded. And I said, I don't know how you guys eat this stuff. Ugh. I said, I feel so different. Here's what Mrs. Jones did not do. She did not look up at me and scowl and say, Shut up, little boy! Time to grow up! She didn't say that. She didn't say, Look around, you little boy! See the results of poverty and racism and hopelessness surrounding you. She didn't say that. She didn't say, How dare you complain about your measly little birthday boy when we have all around us people who are hungry and homeless and jobless and penniless. She didn't say any of that. You know what Mrs. Jones did? She took my hands in hers. And she leaned in and she said, Pastor, let me pray with you about this. And she leaned in and she prayed this beautiful prayer, asking her Father, my Father, our Father, to give me peace. A couple weeks later, on my birthday, there was a knock on the door. And I opened the door, and there was Mrs. Jones standing. And when she smiled, her face, she could light up a room. And she was standing there holding the cake plate with the most beautiful and tasty 4-layer German chocolate cake with red frosting and coconut sprinkles. And I said, oh, it's beautiful. And she said, I know how you people eat this stuff. She was teasing me because she'd been making German chocolate cake for her family and friends for years. But you see, Mrs. Jones didn't come to school me. She came to take care of me. She didn't come to scold me. She came to love me. She didn't come to scorn me. She came to befriend me. Mrs. Jones understood the importance of maintaining and caring for good relationships the way that Jesus did. Folks, I maintain the best thing in life are good relationships. I was a little too fast on the draw. It's my wife, Joanne, of 32 years. She too is a holy woman of God. Lesser mortals would have sent me home to heaven many, many years ago. But I got to work on that relationship, as she does, because it doesn't just happen. And here are my kids. My son Josh, he's a sophomore here at Belpo. He's on the top. Then Becca, and then Abby, and then Tyler's my son-in-law. The one on top of my son-in-law is not his wife; it's his sister-in-law. I don't know how that happened. But you see, they understand the importance of maintaining relationships. Folks, I want to ask you, no, I want to beg you. I want to plead with you. Oh, biblical language. Yea, I beseech thee. Work hard on your relationships. What does that mean? Recognize first and foremost the importance of the relationships you have with others and help them understand the importance of relationships. And then second of all, breathe new life every day into your relationships with creativity and ingenuity and clarity. And creativity. Simply put, recognize the importance and revitalize the essence of your good relationships, because they are the best things in life. Thank you for listening to me this afternoon. God bless you.